So I want to give everyone an idea of what are the steps that we need to take one by one to prepare for market. What is it that we are doing at market? And then the exit, which is the closing of the orders. So the prep, the actual market where we're selling, and then closing those orders in a timely manner so production can go and do what they need to do. That's what I want to talk about this second half of our conversation. But before we get there, tell me in your mind today, the way the world has changed, what's even the relevance of runway shows and market?
None, zero. I honestly, like, I have to say, like, I saw this, but this is, I'm just trying to count, like, how many, like, maybe 7, 8 years ago, like, I would go on 7th and 7th where, you know, there were fashion shows, and even going to Paris, and then you see the immense amount of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like, I actually poured into these runway shows, and there's really no ROI on this. This was back in the days, it was probably more significant, and it had, this was the PR, I guess, vehicle.
Yeah.
That at that time. Right now, it's completely different. Right now, you can do a runway show somewhere where it's so much cheaper and post it on your Instagram and all that stuff, and it's going to look like a runway show.
So there is value still, but a different kind of value.
Yes, yes, if you want to position it like that, yes.
Yeah.
There's value because obviously you need to show your collection. You need to show your vision. You need to show your product. But is it necessary to spend all that money for it? Absolutely not. Like, I think it's ludicrous.
Okay, perfect. Now, convert that to trade shows. So runway is runway, and we know the challenges that come with it, that, you know, you spend this enormous amount of money, and like in 30, 45 minutes, it's all over, and you have maybe 10 minutes worth of footage.
30, 40 minutes, more like 20 minutes.
Yeah, more like 20 minutes. Well, I'm talking about the wait time. The wait time of sitting everyone down and forever hoping that it's going to start somewhere on time.
Yeah.
But let's now transition, because market is Paris, for example, runway shows and trade shows happen simultaneously. So there's the trade show happening, there's runway happening, trade shows happening for 3 days or so, but then there's another week or so of showrooms that are driving sales. That setup still exists today. That business model still exists today, where brands will go and they'll take their own little apartment and show out of their apartment, or they'll show out of a multi-brand showroom, or they'll decide to do a runway. Where do you see which of those is still necessary and the value of it?
Runway shows, we concluded there is no ROIs on them anymore.
Fair enough.
People that go to, at the same time, for example, as you were referring to Paris Fashion Week, people that are exhibiting, they usually don't have runway shows at all.
Correct.
That they are at the trade show. Then you have high-end companies who do the runway, but like you said, they finish the runway, a few days later they open up their showrooms where clients go. I've communicated and spoken recently to some of the people that are still in this high-end fashion industry. There's no more runways.
Yeah.
People do still, due to COVID, it's a little bit restricted. I would say like a lot less. Everybody's doing it through Zoom, and it's kind of like, it's very bizarre. Like
sales are happening through Zoom?
Yeah. Sales.
Collection previews are happening through Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, where some of the major designers that go, like, and actually the designers themselves, they are making the presentation to some of the big clients. So the designer goes, and in the back there is a client.
Which they would never have done in the past.
Never. But, you know, like now even designers are getting involved, probably because, like, everything's at stake, you know? Like, you need to sustain yourself, like, and pay the bills, otherwise it's game over. You know, like, and who's going to survive, obviously? The conglomerates, the biggest ones. So they're doing it through Zoom. People that used to go to trade shows, I don't know how they're going to survive, because they didn't have anything, and unless they position themselves in the market and have a slightly bigger share of the market, they may be still existing, but I would say like 90% of them are like not.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's
And
see if
it-
we can be a
it-
little bit more optimistic.
Right. It is very pessimistic from and I have to be real, this is
Yeah.
how I see it.
Yeah.
I don't see, and it's not like this is because of COVID. COVID, I think, was triggered something that's going to stay permanent. But people, just like other businesses,
It accelerated the disruption our industry needed, and it's forced everyone to do what they were already heading towards doing.
Sure, but also at the same time, from the expenses, the operating expenses point of view, a lot of people have realized, like we can actually operate a lot cheaper like this.
Absolutely.
Because look what happened to other companies, not only like fashion companies, but other. There's no more traveling.
Yeah.
You know what saving that is to other big conglomerates? There's no more traveling, which means obviously no hotels, airplane tickets, and all that stuff. And they're like, we can use all this money actually for R&D, to further, develop the product, etc.
So let's agree that market is never going to go away, but its definition of the way it was exercised is changing. So market as a vehicle is essentially what we call showing collection to a customer.
Yeah.
The way we used to show it was trade shows, children's runway shows.
Yeah.
How we show it in this interim period is digitally. But say next year things get back a little bit more to normal, whatever that form will take, there is still a market.
Yeah.
We still develop a collection, we still need to sell that collection.
That would be interesting to see after post-COVID, how is it going to go back to normal?
Yeah.
I hope it does, because I think there's an aspect of interaction of your buyers from Neiman Marcus, from Dallas coming in and you interacting with them and talking it live and exchanging stories and talking about obviously the product, the sell-throughs. Right now, actually everything functions perfectly.
Yeah.
There's no drawback
There's
to
more
it.
a desire as opposed to a necessity to go back to
Exactly.
a little bit of the
Exactly.
norm. So I don't think, I don't want to look in a crystal ball and assume what's going to happen, but let's say there's a hybrid that happens. Walk us through the steps, regardless of what market looks like today, yesterday, or in the future. What are the steps that you need to do as a brand that's going to market? What would be the absolute must preparatory steps that a company needs to take prior to taking that collection and showing it to, or hoping that they can show it to someone?
Yeah. Well, I think COVID or no COVID, the preparations is the same, and
Yeah.
that's never going to change because it's something that you have to do. It's a procedure of how you get from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
And that's never going to change,
Yeah.
regardless of the market. But and what does that mean? I guess like for this audience to understand, like in the very beginning, obviously the designer makes the collection. They have a vision. They start with the vision boards. They say like, okay, this is what we see is going to be the trend. They take all kinds of pictures. They put it on a big board, and this is something where the motivation and inspiration comes to the designer from. From that point on, then the designer, the sketchers, they start sketching. From that board is a motivation. Now they put it in their head, and the sketcher starts sketching the actual collection. They use, or actually you use some kind of guideline, depending on, of course, what kind of company you work for or whatever you're doing, whether you're going to have more categories, pants, or it's going to be just jackets. You sketch them up and you put them together, and you try to put them together, of course. Like in the end, it's a totally different story. They sketch immense amount of sketches. They color them. They put swatches on every one of these sketches. And then once it's done, then they start narrowing it down, and then they take out, well, this one doesn't go with this.
Who's narrowing it down?
The designers. Initially, the
Yeah.
designers, they say like, oh, we won't need this, etc.
Yep.
And they put it on one side.
Yeah.
And this is what often happens, actually. This would be interesting. Because once that it's, the designers then trim it down, then they invite the sales team to come in. And this is where the sales team, in my opinion, is crucial, because in the end, sales drive or sales bring profits to the
Yeah,
company.
careful with that statement, but
Yeah. Well, they're crucial, but one cannot coexist without the other.
Exactly.
In other words, if you have a good designer and no sales, nothing's going to happen.
Nothing's
And
gonna
if you have a great salesperson without a product, nothing's going to happen. So they coexist, but the sales, in my opinion, sales is extremely important because you have to make sure that your salespeople or whoever's selling it, they believe in the product.
Absolutely.
Because if they don't believe in the product, it's not going to come from the heart.
Yeah.
And we're in this industry. Why? Because it comes from here. It's passion.
absolutely.
So or for that matter, anybody that does anything, if it doesn't come from your heart, you're not gonna sell it as good as, it has to come from there. So salespeople sit, then they start communicating with the designer, and then they say like, well, and this is what happens obviously to me, and like to all my salespeople, I ask them, okay, so who's buying that dress? Who's buying that shirt? Who's buying that pant? And I need them to answer me by clients, not like I think I can sell, because this is where you also have to stay extremely objective.
Yeah.
Because when you see something, you will obviously automatically refer to yourself.
Yeah.
I like this. But
Doesn't
that's
matter.
not the point.
That's not the
That's not the point. You have to be so focused on what your clients want, and you have to know your clients.
Yeah.
So when I would bring my salespeople in the room, I would ask them, okay, like who's buying that? Who's buying that? And if they can't answer it to me, like I take it out.
And I think that one of the things that we have to know about this conversation is that today, this is a lot harder. Where if you have a wholesale business model, then absolutely, there's 50 accounts that you do business with. You know what those 50 accounts like to purchase historically. However, when you have 500,000 individual customers shopping online, there could be many different aesthetics. So it's a lot broader. So now the onus is back on you as a company that I have to be disciplined with the collection that I take to market. I just can't be, I can't wait for my retailer to tell me what will sell. You have to really do your research about the end consumer and what they're going to buy.
Yeah. So, like I said, the first step: designers, motivational boards, etc., sketchers. They start sketching it. Salespeople come in. They evaluate it. Like I said, I force my salespeople to tell me the names of clients who are actually going to buy this, because my salespeople, they have to know their clients.
Yeah.
After that happens, then the board is narrowed down. Then it's merchandised along salespeople plus the designers. They come to a consensus and they come to a conclusion, okay, this is going to be. Then then it goes into production, obviously sampling. Samples are being made, samples come in. Then we have to merchandise it by whatever it is, whether it's by color, by fabric, etc. Then a lot of times things happen there where you're missing something, because what you do is like you want to present the collection as a collection, not as an individual piece.
Absolutely.
So what happens then is, like, for example, like let's say a stylist is putting together a look of that collection, and often it happens that we're looking for pants. Let's say like she puts on I'm talking about like ladies collection.
You developed the collection, but you forgot to add pants to it.
Yeah, and then you put her all together, and then she has the top and a great jacket, but we're looking for pants.
Yeah.
And there's no pants. So this is when you start adding or subtracting.
So we should separate the conversation of there's the trend merchandising that happens before the design process is finalized, and what you're talking about now is line editing from samples.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is a more expensive way of doing it.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be, once you're on the board, start styling that person on the board already.
Great advice. Great advice.
Because then you actually, when it comes to you, when the samples are being made, first, you're not wasting money.
Yeah.
And second, it's already merchandised for you because you're selling looks.
Yeah.
And that saves you a lot of money.
All right, samples are now in the showroom. Now what?
Samples in the showroom.
You completely depressed the designer by cutting half the line out.
True, very true, very true. That's what happens. They get angry, why are you taking this and all that.
Why did you make me make it if you weren't going to use it?
Exactly. And then salespeople we gather them in the showroom. I put them together. I tell them this is, we do a presentation, obviously more more in detail when it comes to fabric, functionality of certain things that designers may or may not have added in the meantime. Then we set up a plan and a strategy how to attack our clients. Attack maybe too harsh of a word. Yeah,
That's pretty much what it is.
yeah. Who are we going to call in? Who's going to like what? We discuss, kind of to get a feel of what it is. I often play games, and I ask my salespeople to tell me, like, out of these collections, which are going to be like 5 best-selling items. And then at the end of the selling campaign, then we kind of compete, like I say, oh, this one was right. And I just want to see who has what kind of vision, who is really true, who knows their customer. The ones that know their customer, they will tell me this one.
At what stage does the conversation about pricing come in? Because now you've gotten samples.
At that stage.
So you've gotten the samples, but you need to figure out the prices that production has given you. In many cases are dependent upon how many units you're going to sell.
Yes.
So you need to almost project your sales sometimes even before your accounts have seen the line.
Yes.
So knowing what you're talking about, of being able to just look at them and say, hey, these 5 pieces we're going to have to take a risk on today because production needs to buy the fabrics.
Yes.
To hit the kind of pricing you need to hit.
Exactly.
So walk me through the process of how do you create that line sheet?
Like you said, the samples are there. Everything is in, should I say, like cell format or like with a picture format, and you have all the prices where it says what the cost of it is. Automatically, we calculate based on our profit margins and the markup for the stores, the final retail price. Then what
would you say traditional markup for the stores was?
Like it depends, like 2.5. It depends. Some of the designers that have 3 times 3. So whatever. Let's say like it costs me. Let's say it's sometimes a company costs them $100 to make something. Basically, the retail is going to be $300.
Okay.
And that's not my profit. From 100 to 300, it's actually what Neiman Marcus is getting.
Is their margin requirement almost in many cases?
Very much so.
Yep.
Very much so. And then what happens is then once we have the retail price, we actually start based on production cost, our cost. We calculate the final retail prices, and then we compare the retail price to the actual item. And then we say like, wow, this is way too much. We're not gonna sell this sweater for $1,500. And this is where
you have to do both bottom up and top down.
Yes.
You have to start from the standpoint of like, what would I pay for this?
Yes.
What would my customer be willing to pay for it?
Yes.
And then you work yourself down to what will the required margin be to give to a retailer, and that's your wholesale.
Yes.
And then you worry about, did we make any money based upon the cost of production?
I try to worry about making the money at the very beginning stage, because I can understand, and I think 10% of the collection needs to have some of those pieces that are trend-setting vision. It could be actually like super expensive. It doesn't matter, because you want to have those pieces still in the showroom to show your clients where your vision is and what you see and where you are going forward with. Like
what percentage or how?
10. 10% of the collection.
Okay.
I always say 10% of the collection for the designers, go whatever you feel, whatever is in your heart.
Yeah.
Because you are actually showing them what is here.
It's very generous of you to give them 10%.
Well, it costs a lot of money.
Okay.
I mean, they can do it all, but so 10% of the collection, like make it like let it come out of your heart. Design whatever you want to design, but you have to understand also the 90% of the collection is what's going to sell.
Yeah.
That 10%, only 2% of the people buy.
But it's harder to sell that 90 if there isn't that aspiration that's created on top.
Absolutely no.
So whatever that percentage is, and that's a decision for every creative to make on their own. In the beginning, I think that number is higher, but as the more mature you get, I think you're right that number needs to become slower and lower, and you need to have a a collection that makes sense for your consumer as opposed to something that's pure fantasy.
Sure. I'll give you an example. Like again, I'll refer to Giambattista Valli, like his runway shows. When you look at the runway show, like you see things like, oh my God, it's out there.
Yeah.
It's really a reflection of designer's mind put into the clothing, into the fabric, and the way it's sewn, the way it's put together, the color combination, the styling, you name it. But know that 90% of those things don't actually sell. What sells is, for example, like.
But the imagery from that
Image.
show,
But
the
the
imagery from
image
that
is
show
there.
drives
Yeah.
the sales.
Yes.
So it's
Then-
almost like a necessary tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to, because basically that 10% is, again, like I keep on repeating myself, like it's a reflection of what you think is neat, what you think people should wear.
Right. So go back to line sheets and margins.
That's right. So anyway, so yes,
Yeah.
we were at the pricing. So we look at the pricing and then we say like, okay, well, this is a little too expensive, and then we negotiate with our own production team.
Yeah.
So like, can you bring this down? Then he says, well, you have to give me quantities, you have to give me 1,000 pieces if you want me to get that price. And then we say like, well, we can't. So there's like internal negotiation.
Where do you make the sacrifices on the pricing?
It depends. Like it's more of a consensus. I'd like to my salespeople to chip in here for them to have confidence also that they'll try to push this this particular item that is maybe like super expensive.
Yeah.
So, and I want them to be on board. If we're not all on board, like I'm just wasting money.
Yeah. And okay, so let's say we figured that out. Now what? Now
So-
you need to get now you need to start communicating with your customer and get them to the show.
Right,
Make
so-
the appointment.
Yeah. So the collection is ready now. We priced it. We agreed on the pricing. Some things.
And we're not a Calvin Klein, so they do not know your name.
Exactly.
So
Then everything is finalized, put into the sheet with the pricing and the pictures, or uploaded into the system or the software, new order, or whatever have you, sure, etc. And this is when salespeople get it on the phone. Actually, they already started,
yeah.
even prior to the collection, because market is it's cyclical. So like it goes like every 3-4 months, pretty much. Like you go and like make appointments. So people line up. We put it on the calendar, put all the appointments together. We also, of course, we have a strategy meeting, sales strategy meeting prior to all this. And that consists of who else do we want to buy this collection?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these companies, they are in certain amount of stores, but there's always a wish list.
Yeah.
There's always a wish list who they still want to be in. And this is when we start making plans and strategies how to get them into the showroom. Because sometimes like we cannot force anybody to buy anything, but if we can bring them into the showroom and do the right presentation.
Now you have a fighting chance.
Yeah, then we have a chance. Otherwise, like you don't have anything.
How many of them are asking to see imagery of the collection prior to them accepting the meeting?
That's actually what we try to send them in the email right away. First, actually, that's a good question, because first you try in a nice way, like, to send them an email and say, look, like, we're doing this presentation, etc. A lot of times they don't respond, sometimes they do. So your next line of attack is like you send them imagery, and you cannot bombard them with a lot. You send them only few pictures of something amazing.
Yeah. This is key to remember, guys. Send out an email, assume it got ignored.
Assume we got ignored.
Assume it got ignored.
They got
next.
They get thousands of them.
Yeah.
So then the next line of attack, like I said, is imagery. You take 1, 2, 3 pictures that are really, really appealing, and you send it to them. Then oftentimes you get, interesting, send me more pictures. You respond, I would really love for you to come into the showroom.
Excellent.
Because this is where you want to close them. Because then if they see the entire collection, they will always find something that they don't like. And there will always be an excuse for them not to come unless they are absolutely in love with it.
So fight the urge to inundate them with everything that you own or everything that you made. Regardless of how excited you are about the collection, regardless of how happy you are with the end result, you do not know if the other person you're sharing this with feels the same way. Tease them with what offers clarity and focus of your decisions and your creative mind. And at the end of the, if that is not enough, that does not mean sending them more is going to sway them one way or the other.
Yes. But they also, I think you need to be very creative with this. I remember back in the days when email just started. Okay, like I don't want to mention your age, but when email just started.
Email just started?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, communicating, more email started in the 70s, obviously, when it was first done by the government. But I'm meaning more when it became kind of an integral part of every business house.
Yeah.
Before that, what was going on before then? People would actually take catalogs and send it to clients.
Okay.
That's how or they would see it on the billboard.
Absolutely, yeah.
Email comes, and then with email, with the bigger attachments and pictures and all that stuff, then all of a sudden, there's no more actual packages us sending to these clients.
Yeah.
So in the mind of a buyer, he or she is sitting, and now she's getting her mailbox. It's like this big.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Who's she going to answer? She's going to skip, or is going to go just like you would through your spam, right? Same thing. So I urge all these people who are trying to start their own brands is to be a little more creative, to think outside of the box. And I'll tell you what I did. When email became so popular like that I hear it from my buyers. They tell me, like, Zoran, my mailbox is this big. How am I going to respond? Then I said to my salespeople to start printing catalogs and to actually do
Almost
it
do it
the old-fashioned way,
Yeah.
in a nice envelope and all that stuff. Because right now, before they used to get those packages, then it stopped with email. Now let's bring them something fresh, even though it's
great.
old.
After this workshop, everyone will start printing catalogs now.
But look, like you have to try, like always,
you know? Always, yeah.
Always. I mean, I can tell you insane amount of stories how I got clients, and it's like I just had to be creative. Like, you know how many no's we got? How many no's we got from people? You always have to find a way. I mean, it's like I went.
But eventually they would show up. Eventually, you pursue.
There's some people that if they see that you're really persistent, and but persistent means I'm talking 2-3 seasons.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna make a phone call, you don't get a response. Then you're gonna make next season. Then they say, okay, Zoran, I will try to make it next season. Then you go next season. I'm so sorry, like I was really, but this is now 4 seasons. That's 4 years. I mean, 2 years already.
Yeah.
So you have to be very patient, or you have
But during that time, you need to continuously have a story to tell.
Absolutely.
That there has to be a continuous story that, didn't see you in Paris, hope to see you in New York next season. Didn't see you in New York this season, hope to see you in Vegas next season. Didn't see you in Vegas, can I send you a new catalog?
Sure.
Just dressed as celebrity. Just launched our new e-commerce platform. Just launched a collaboration with Moncler. On and on and on. So there isn't just writing the same email to get someone's attention with no new news is stalking. Having news to give in each of these polite but persistent yet professional emails is making sure you're not wasting this person's time. You're letting them know that they're missing out on something, and you value their time, but you also want to do business with them.
Right, and that's when you have to think of how you have to go back to your headquarters, to your company, and say, look, these people are not responding to me, and it's going to take time. They will come, but we need to continue on working on our end for next season to be more attractive, for them to say, these guys are serious.
Do you think social media is sufficient to get that message across today?
Absolutely.
Like I got the collection, I shot it, I put it on Instagram, and I tagged the buyer at Neiman's.
That's the way they do it now.
Yeah.
I still don't, look, I'm not I still think, of course I understand it because we build a business model on that, but I still don't agree with some of those things. For those business purposes, for sure, I think it's much easier. You put your collection on Instagram and all that,
Yeah.
but that whole social media aspect and later on what happens,
Yeah.
we may have different opinions about.
Okay.
But yes, like this is the digital world. This is what's going on, and this is the future. This is how it's going to be.
All right, so let's say we got their attention and we decided, what would you recommend for a startup? Would you recommend that they partner up with a multi-brand showroom? Would you suggest that they get their own sales team and try to show it themselves out of like a trade show, or they just do a digital trade show and hope and pray that it works and people come and see their collection online?
Of course, it depends from the financial aspect. From the financial point of view, if you have a little more money,
I have $5,000.
that's not going to get you much.
Okay.
Because, but in other words, you asked me, should I go to a
For market, I have $15,000. Can I do anything?
1.5?
1.5.
Yes, then you can go to a multi-brand showroom and expose it. Why? Because you can do it yourself, of course.
Okay.
If you are creative enough, it depends what kind of people you have working for you,
Yeah.
or who are doing the sales.
Yeah.
If they're creative enough and can figure out
Yeah.
how to get to those clients, then by all means, that's
Okay.
the way you do it. If you're not, then you're better off going to a multi-brand showroom,
Yeah.
where you get, only because you get exposure.
Yeah.
Multi-brand showroom is a showroom that has multiple brands that they carry, and there's a lot of clients from all over the world that they come in and see other collections.
So you feel that's a good first step?
Yes.
So we get the customer interested, we get them to the show, we get them to pay attention to the product. Tell me about sales. Tell me about at the show or at the showroom, wherever it is that they come. If you have 30 minutes with this person that has made the time to come see you, what do you want to get across?
First of all, you don't have 30 minutes. You probably have like about 5 minutes.
Okay.
In the very beginning, the attention span, and it's not because of my attention span, it's because they're coming to see you.
Yeah.
They made an effort,
Yeah.
but they're rushing on to the next appointment.
Yeah.
You gotta catch them and catch their interest within those 5 minutes.
Okay.
That's what you have. So my salespeople, as I tell them, I mean, obviously this is what I learned and I transfer on to my salespeople, is before they come, you better know everything about this customer.
Yeah.
You gotta know what brands do they carry in the store, where is the store, how many stores. Look at any articles. Are there any articles about the store? You gotta know your client. You gotta know who you're selling to. Because if they come in and if you're gonna go and pull a jacket and show it to them, and in reality they don't sell jackets,
They don't
you're
have
done.
that. Yeah.
It's over. Game over. So you have to know your customer just like in anything else.
Yeah. Everyone is so absorbed in their own creations.
Yes.
And assuming that anyone that sees it is obviously going to fall in love with it. They may fall in love with it, but they are, everyone has a mandate.
Sure.
And they have an aesthetic that their store represents or their boutique represents. And we have to know that. So we do not waste their time with things that they do not have an interest in or their focus is not on.
Exactly. First, you gotta get them in
Yeah.
and show them what they want.
Okay.
And make them hungry. Once they sit down, because now you show them already like what they want and they start getting curious and there's interest there. Once they sit down, then you have a possibility towards the end to show some of those 10% of the pieces.
Yeah.
And possibly other pieces.
Show them what they cannot get from someone else.
Yes.
It's you're giving them what they need, and you're giving them what fulfills a hole that they do not know where to fill.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in order for you to do that, you have to know your customer.
Yeah.
You still have
Long
to know
in
them.
advance.
Yeah, long in advance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you just go in there like because you just want to sell it to them, they'll feel it very quick, and
Can you think
it's
about
over.
it like an example of where this worked, or at a
I mean, there's myriad of examples
Yeah.
like that, like from specialty stores to department stores, international department stores.
or
Like
converting a buyer that was just obstinate for months and months, and finally you got them.
sure, my favorite challenge was when somebody told me that you can't get that particular buyer of that store, whether it's international. That's when I said, oh, really?
Really? Yeah.
To me, that was challenging. I love doing that.
Yeah.
And that's why, actually, now going back, I left Calvin Klein because it was too easy.
Yeah.
It was like, you don't have to make an appointment. People are coming to you. I'm like, okay, come on, let's show some creativity, and you got to fight. So now we're in sales, right?
Yeah,
still?
we're in sales, yeah.
So we still, people come in and your regular clients show up, new potential wish list clients, they come and They show up, you present the collection, then some people would do the orders right away,
Yeah.
the spots. Some you will wait for like 2 days, 3 days, a week.
Yeah.
You usually give them a deadline, okay? And why you give them a deadline? Because your production people are telling you this by this time I need to have all the orders in, so they can calculate the fabric and they can send it out for production.
So production has to have provided you with the parameters.
Absolutely.
Of A, you want this price, get me this many minimums. You
Exactly.
want this delivery date, I need the order by X date.
Yes, and while we're in the middle of the selling market, we often, for the orders that come in, we would log in the orders and already see at what quantity we already are. For example, my production person would tell me there's a minimum of 1,000 pieces, and as we add all the orders that are coming in, let's say we come to 600. Then we project to see how many other clients we expect these orders from, and if it's only 200, then we would immediately take it off and not even sell it. Then we would cancel those orders.
So we overlapped at Calvin, where we started. We overlapped again at the manufacturing company, which was the couple that we worked with, where we repositioned the brand and got it out of just classic dresses to be more sportswear. That was a repositioning exercise. And then we overlapped again at Fashion Group for Adidas. So tell me about that was an amazing. I mean, that was one of my favorite brands ever to work with.
For sure.
And so tell me about your experience with Y3 and Originals, and with Stella Gorf.
There was no Originals, was a separate thing. I was consulting with them, and it was a few brands. It was Y3. It's Adidas Fashion Group.
Yeah.
It is still Adidas, but completely different entity, even though it's still run from Herzog, which is in Germany. That's where the headquarters for Adidas. There is Stella McCartney was there, Porsche Design, Y3, SLVR. There are like multiple of brands. Silver. So that place is just amazing. I think it's just the vibe, the energy, and the way they do it. It's a German-run company, but because they're so big, there's also a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of things. Any changes are rather slow. However, knowing their mentality, the German mentality, and again, every time I speak like this, like I worked most of my, I guess, career for the Italians, like a little bit American, then the Italians, and then some German. There's always a cultural difference. It's like the Germans are completely different than the Italians, and they're completely different than the Americans. So this is where you have to really stay, again, unbiased and understand.
What's interesting is that in all those scenarios, you're helping those brands enter the American market.
Yes, it's always the case, because I'm based here. So they look for me to introduce their brand to the U.S. market, because I've been here, obviously, and I know it very well. But at the same time, I have to understand the Italian mentality of them pushing their skinny jeans into a market where the wide leg pants are still on, or bell bottom. So and it's it's communication, but it's very interesting. I find it cool.
What if you were to go back and you had the key takeaways in your experience, the foundation layer that Calvin established for you, the communication layer that Kozomara and Giambattista Valli created for you, and then ultimately the ability to advise a company like Adidas on getting high-end into athletic stores and fashion stores. What would be the advice you would give today to someone on what are 3 of the most valuable things for selling?
For selling only?
Let's start with general, and then you talk about selling.
Number one, when it comes to selling, is know your customer. I've seen and I've hired, and unfortunately I had to let go a few people, mostly because they did not understand that you have to know your customer. So like any designer that is starting nowadays, like you better do your research, better know who you're designing it for, because the market is so limited
Yeah.
compared to what it used to be. So know your customer is number one, and probably you have to be creative. You have to be creative, and
As a salesperson.
as a salesperson, creative, not the designer. You
Yeah.
have to be very creative, and in what sense? In a sense of how to get your customers and how to look at the bigger picture of making the brand bigger, of course. And then you gotta love what you do.
Yeah.
You gotta love like the brand that you are part of. If you're a designer, obviously you love your brand because you're the designer. But if you're joining a company, to not join the company just because it's a job. And I understand there's financial restrictions and you're forced to get a job. You know, you take it for that reason and it's okay, but try it still to look at it as a bigger picture and the long-term picture, and that is do what you really enjoy doing. Because you're not going to sell the collection as good that you don't like as the one that you really adore. Because I've seen some of my salespeople who love the collection and they just go like and talk about it, and it's like with such enthusiasm and happiness, and of course this kind of energy is related on to the client.
To the client,
So and
absolutely.
they feel it, as opposed to somebody who you can see that is there just to be there, and it's like they show like this kind of stuff, and it's like those don't
You want
last
the black
that long.
one or you want the short black
Yeah.
one?
Those usually
Yeah.
don't last too long. So anyway, like I said, I think know your customer. Well, first of all, first is make sure you do what you love,
Yeah.
and you love the brand that
Yeah.
you are working for or designing. Which is obviously be passionate about it. Know your customer, and be creative.
And be creative. And if you were, you know, as far as what allowed you to stay in the business for as long as you have, what allowed you to, you know, still remain excited about it? And like, is there a brand out there that you still admire? Is there a brand out there that you still notice that like they're still doing it right, or they're changing with the times the way they should be?
So everything has changed, of course. Like I had my favorite designers, you know, like from the men's side and from the women's side. Some of them do exist still, some of them don't.
Yeah.
Like everything has changed, so I don't, like what made me stay, I think, is the excitement of always something new, because it's, before, as you know, like in this industry, we used to have only 2 seasons, which was spring and fall.
Yeah.
But because of
Business.
now business, and it is money and it's profit hungry, all of a sudden now we have 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Profits is one aspect of it, of course, like I'm looking from the financial part, but of course I also understand the stores, they changed it to 4 seasons a year because they wanted to have a fresh product in the store nonstop, as opposed to staying
frequent
there.
deliveries. Yeah.
Yes, frequent deliveries, and it's just like more excitement and more freshness in the store. So that's what probably like made me stay in the industry. And then always, like actually, for me, it was always interesting to see how, like, be more on the observant side, where there's so many brands that got to be successful without any PR, word of mouth, digital, and there's so many different stories and so many different successful business models.
Yeah.
And one does not always apply to the other.
Yeah.
Like they're independent. Like you could see like brands that build their images and their actually they build their brand name or their
Yeah.
name based on only on social media.
Yeah.
There's another one that did only PR, like you know billboards and that kind of stuff. There's a third one that did it only through word of mouth.
Yeah.
And I think with hearing all these different stories, it's like that's when people start, from the design perspective and also business model perspective, oh yeah, but these guys, they did it, so we should do this model.
Yeah.
And then next year somebody else comes with a different business model, and then they go like to this model, and then all of a sudden they start like there's no
So disruption
continuity.
is the
They completely
continuity.
get
Yeah.
disrupted, and there's no more clarity in their head, like which business model do they want to pursue. So like I would say, like whatever it is, business model, you have to know what your business model is. But whatever it is, stick to it and believe in it and go for it.
Excellent. Excellent. And
And don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong, because yes, 99 will tell you wrong, but you need only one.
All right, so this is something I ask all of my guests. Tell me your favorite ad campaign that you can think of. Any brand. And any industry.
You know, like I tell you, I don't even know who, like, whatever it's the ad campaign, I don't know who did it, but you had that picture in your loft, in your apartment. It was like flying models,
Okay.
something like that. Was that McQueen?
That was Alexander McQueen. That was a Nick Knight shot campaign of Alexander McQueen.
That was insane.
That was insane.
You see, that's creativity, yeah? Like, that's what I see as people really being creative, because when you go through the pages in a magazine, like you're listing, and there's so many ads,
Yeah.
and then you go like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah.
And I think that is the point
Of something that's memorable.
right, and that's the goal of anybody putting that campaign in the magazine, because you want them to stop and double look it.
That type of magic is rare.
It's rare.
The campaign was called, I believe, Spear of Light, and it's one of the few where the idea was, how do we show the entire collection in a single image and include McQueen in the image?
Right.
So,
And making it dynamic.
and making it dynamic.
Yeah.
So good memory, because I was, it's I love art,
Yeah.
and of all of the art that I have, that's probably the only fashion-related image I own. I think.
Yeah, look at that.
But the fun part of that is, I wasn't thinking along those lines, so thank you for bringing it up, but I was thinking along the lines of something like Calvin Klein, when we both started our careers there, the power of the Mark Wahlberg and Kate Moss campaign right in Times Square, and that just being enough for everyone to walk in and understand that Calvin Klein was a household name.
Yeah, I think at that moment, Calvin Klein himself, he knew exactly what he was doing. He captured the audience at the right moment with nothing else but a celebrity wearing it.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was kind of like, even when you remember Mark Wahlberg and his underwear and all that stuff, and exposing the body like that, and I think it was, he was nude, not nude, but it's he didn't have a shirt on, etc.
It was Kate who didn't have a shirt on.
Or it was something, but it was more of a shock to the audience. And again, it's the same effect. People were like, "Oh my God, what is that?" Same as your ad, the one in the loft, the McQueen ad, is the same thing. You're getting the attention. And I think whoever is doing something, they should do that kind of advertising. Yeah. Your goal is sometimes it is to show the product, and sometimes it's to show your creativity. Because if you make your flying models, if you make an impression, because through that ad, somebody who's looking at it, you're gonna look at it, and even if your name is on the bottom, you'll be like, wow, who's this? This person is creative.
Yeah.
And when you see it, of course you're gonna have an interest to explore, to see who is this person,
So
who is this brand.
Yeah, and I think Calvin had his finger on the pulse of cultural interest. So the strength of that original campaign being repeated 20 years later with Justin Bieber and Kendall Jenner, I believe, was incredible, to the point where it was even up in Soho at the same place.
But I wonder, did they have the same effect?
I don't know. It wasn't the same. It had a similar reach, but not the same impact.
No.
That the first.
Probably not.
First one, probably. Very.
People are always looking for something new, they want something different, and it's always whoever has the courage to take that leap of faith and do something that nobody has done before.
Yeah. Zoran, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here with us today, and I think your experience and your knowledge has been a valuable asset for everyone watching.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you.